Hi, and welcome to the Dr. Z and J.W podcast. I'm J.W. Stewart, a veteran broadcaster and journalist with nearly 30 years experience. I've worked at ESPN and NBC, and now I teach at the University of New Haven.
And I'm Sheahon Zenger, Director of Athletics at the University of New Haven, previously the same position at the University of Kansas and Illinois State University. Prior to that, I spent many years in athletic administration and just as many years coaching college football. Welcome to the Dr. Z and J.W podcast.
Hi again, everybody, and welcome back to the Dr. Z and J.W podcast. We appreciate you joining us today across all of our social media channels. As always, our podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Today, our guest is David Beckerman, who graduated from the University of New Haven back in 1966. He is in our Athletics Hall of Fame, but David is best known as the founder and former CEO of Starter Corporation, which is famous for its sports apparel. Many people remember the famous starter jackets when they came out in the 70s and 80s, and they've made a return now in sport fashion as well. You can see still a lot of people wearing them, which leads me to ask Dr. Z, did you ever have a starter jacket back in the day?
I actually did. One of my first coaching jobs was at Drake University, and I don't know how they got the product, but I had a starter jacket and, was very proud of it. And it was my first college coaching job, and I wore that thing with pride. And it kept me awful warm that winter too. It's cold in Des Moines, Iowa in the winter.
Yeah, they are great. We can't wait to talk to David about that. I actually did not have one. I'm ashamed to say. I might have been the only kid in my hometown to not have one. But in the mid 1980s, when the Boston Celtics were very good and winning, they won the NBA title in 1986. A lot of my friends had the Celtics starter jackets, and then of course Michael Jordan, the Bulls were popular. They had those, and the New York Giants, right? They won the Super Bowl as well. So you saw a lot of that, or I saw a lot of that growing up in Rhode Island. I'm kind of bummed all these years later I never had one. But Dr. Z, I want to bring you back to our last podcast from a week ago where we were talking about the kicking off of the NFL season, and you had a chance to see the Chiefs win on Thursday Night Football, right? The open defense of their first Super Bowl title in 50 years. They beat the Texans. You and I talked on the phone not long after that about something that was kept being brought up in the broadcast over and over. That's the money that Patrick Mahomes got, and the money that Deshaun Watson with the Houston Texans got, and Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth, who are about as good as you get in the business of broadcasting. That was they kind of beat that drum over and over. I wanted to get your thoughts. Tell our audience what it is you told me about the money and the fact that was brought up over and over. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I OD'd on football last weekend. I'm not going to do it this weekend. It started with the Chiefs and it went through the Cowboys and different people. We have friends who either coach or play at certain teams, and in between, I watched college football. In between this and that, up until 1 or 2 in the morning, and felt like I was recovering for the next 2 or 3 days. So that was a lot of fun, and the Chiefs won, and that was going away. That was fun, and I'm a big fan of Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. So this has nothing to do with them. It's just simply, I think, in this era of a lot of people struggling with the pandemic and finances, I found it interesting that the announcers kept dwelling on that. I just wish they wouldn't have. It's a business, and the players and owners share alike in that profit, and we all know that. Just I think it's a hard message when some folks are out there, trying to make ends meet. And so that was really my takeaway on that, J.W.
Yep. I think you bring up a good point, and I just want to wrap that up with one of the courses I teach this semester is Development of American Sports. It's in our sport management program here at the University of New Haven, and we talk about the intersection of sports and business and sports and society all the time. Dr. Z, you've been around the game a long time. It seems like that we as a society here in America, when we assign value to an athlete, it's always the money first, isn't it? It's the money in the championships, maybe the money first and the championship second. In terms of what we're doing as a society, I understand the money, but are we doing it differently? Are we doing it backwards? Shouldn't we be assigning value to people for who they are as human beings? Like Patrick Mahomes, who is a terrific, he's worth all the money. He's a winner, checks those boxes, but but he's somebody who contributes to his community, and those are the things we should be promoting, right?
I'm a huge Patrick Mahomes fan, as is my family, especially my boys, and he's done some really neat things. He stands up in a restaurant and pays for everyone's meals and great things like that. I want people to know that about him. He's an everyman in that community and just really brings people to him. And I think he truly is the face and the future of the NFL, not just because of his talent, but because of his personality and how he treats others. And so that's my whole point. I'd rather hear about that than you mentioned the salary once and you move on. It just kept coming up. And I don't know why, but as a fan, I want people to know the other side of Patrick more than I do that part. He's earned the money. But I just think we need to hear the human interest side, and I'm watching him play is just there's nothing I've never. I'm guessing maybe Joe Namath back in his day kind of electrified crowds like that, but I haven't seen anything like that in my lifetime. The guy can throw sidearmed, underhanded, across field. It's something. I mean, and then Andy Reid's play calling and designs of plays that normally would be in the backyard, that are on the NFL field that are working, and it's just a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, we've seen Patrick throw passes where he's not even looking, right? He's like a point guard. He's like Magic Johnson out there.
Yeah.
Before we bring out David, I just wanted to let all of our alums in the audience know about our upcoming Centennial Ball. Of course, David is one of our alums. Our Centennial Ball will be held virtually this year. It'll be Saturday, October the 3rd. In addition, we're also going to have a special athletics kickoff called Charge On. That'll be on Friday night, October the 2nd. We'd love to have our alumni register for both. The cost for the Centennial Ball is just $25. It promises to be a memorable evening of student showcases, entertainment, and a live auction. Many more details to be revealed, and when that happens, we'll reveal them here on the podcast and also on our website. Your support through the Centennial Ball helps us get closer to meeting and hopefully even succeeding our ambitious $120 million Charger Challenge goal, which is part of the overall campaign for the University of New Haven. For more information or how to register for both the Centennial Ball or the Charge On special athletics event on Friday, October the 2nd, be sure to register at newhaven.edu/alumni. We mentioned alumni. David Beckerman is one of our most famous alums. He graduated from UNH back in 1966, went on to have a lot of success in the business world as the founder and CEO of the Starter Corporation, a leader in the sports apparel industry. Many people remember the Starter jacket. It was popular in the 70s and 80s. It's still popular today. David is also a leader and a philanthropist within the UNH family and our Charger Nation. Longtime high school basketball coach, both here in Connecticut and in Florida. He's also a trustee of the Basketball Hall of Fame, and David has some great stories to tell us, and we look forward to having David join us from the green room here in just a moment. I'm guessing we provided him with plenty of snacks in the green room. And we welcome David. David Beckerman, welcome to the Dr. Z and J.W podcast. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Fine, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
David, tell us about your path to UNH. Many people watch this podcast probably know about you, know about your history, but for those who don't, tell us about your path to UNH and what the school was like back in the 1960s.
Well, the school was one building, Maxey Hall. In fact, they even had the gym in that building. That's all it was. Mainly a commuter school. I had to work during the day or at night, depending, back and forth, and that's what I could afford. And UNH was really built to help the local student, which was really terrific. And it was helpful in terms of it had a course and it had a curriculum that made it easy for me to work and go to school at the same time.
Your education paid off, certainly, David. As I mentioned, most people know you as the founder and former CEO of the Starter Corporation, the famous starter jackets and the hats and the logos. Tell us the story of how the Starter Corporation started, the keys to success in launching and building that iconic brand.
Well, Well, it really started, and the basis was really on niche marketing. What had happened was back in the, I think it was 1970, slow pitch softball was a huge social event, if you will. And I noticed that the players and the participants were spending money on uniforms, on gloves, on shoes, and they were paying a high tariff. But there was one product that was sort of a misnomer, and that was a nylon windbreaker. It basically was the same jacket that everybody had, but the problem is that all of them were made with an elastic cuff. The problem with an elastic cuff is if you're a big fella and you have a big wrist, it cuts your circulation off. If you're not a big fella and it's loose, then the air goes through, and so it functionally didn't work. And I remember some of my friends saying, gee, I don't know what to do. I said, well, it's simple, just put a knit cuff on it. Well, they challenged, or I sort of got challenged, and I went to a local fabric store, bought some fabric, and I said, and I bought 4 or 5 products that were available on the market, and I went to a tailor and I said, can you take this collar, this pocket, this, so forth and so on, and he made me a sample. So now I have a sample, and I said, well, what are you going to do with it? And I said, well, let me see if sporting goods store would like it. And I went to 4 or 5 sporting goods stores, and everybody liked it. They asked me about the price, and I had no idea about pricing. I just picked it in the middle of what all the competitors were. And they all said, nice, but it doesn't fit in my inventory, because in the team business, what happens is generally, as Coach would know, let's say there are 15 kids on a team or 18 kids on a team, and the following year they want to reorder 6 pieces or 5 pieces. Unless they matched, and me putting a knit cuff made me totally different from everybody else. Well, that was a negative. And I sort of went home with my tail between my legs, and I was really depressed. And then I remember the old adage about taking a negative and turning it into a positive. So what we did was I went back to the retailer and I said, listen, if you buy our coats, and I had no manufacturing, I had nothing at that time, with all the bluff. I said, I'll give you an exclusive on the area so that I won't open up anybody within a 20-mile radius of your store. So you can get an extra $1 or $2 and increase your margin. So all of a sudden the retailer began to think about it. If I'm not going to sell anybody, and I just set it up on an exclusive territory, that was the beginning. And what I did is, in the business, you're booking business 4 to 6 months in advance. That's the way it normally works. So I started booking business and had all this paperwork and all these orders. And of course, went to the bank, and bank said, well, where's your manufacturing facility? I said, whoops. I went to the yellow pages, and I got burned 2 or 3 times by picking the wrong facilities, but finally found somebody in Waterbury who ultimately joined the company later on, and we started building the product, and I was in business.
Wow.
But it started with a knit cuff, being a little bit different, trying to build a niche, and giving comfort to the consumer.
You know, David, we have students who watch this at UNH, and of course alums. That story should be played over and over and over again, and I don't know how many business classes. You know, you just gave me a heck of an education about starting a business and a niche and so on and so forth, but also the boldness of going in with an idea and getting a tailor to work with you, but then going into the retail shops, coming back again, and that's classic. That reminds me of Colonel Sanders going to see over 1,000 people before someone bought his recipe. You know.
Well, perseverance. I mean, we may get into it, but I know in the case of the NFL, we called on them 8 times a year. Excuse me, 4 times a year for 8 years, 32 times before we got the license. So you really, if you believe in what you're doing and you think you have a concept that is worthy, nothing, I repeat, nothing is more than hard work. You just got to do hard work. It's as simple as that.
So we could ask you for the next 40 minutes about starter stories, and we certainly want to get into your high school coaching and the work you currently do. So as we're on the starter topic, is there a story that kind of for you is a favorite that let's say you were in a class or with a bunch of alums, what would that story be?
Well, all right, you have to understand that we started the business. We were an institutional trade, which meant that we made red, blue, green jackets and put Joe's Bar and Grill or UNH or whatever it is on it. And we built up a reputation. And this is really in two parts. And one day we started getting orders from a Boston outlet. And instead of getting a traditional 15 or 20 piece orders, we were getting 75 and 100. I didn't understand it. It was a navy jacket with a red and white trim on it. I said, you know, I got to go see this, whoever this is, giving us orders. And we're a small little company. I went up and I saw a company called Twins Enterprises, who were and still is 20 feet from Fenway Park. And they were, at the time, were buying our coats. And because they were considered a semi-concessionaire, they were taking the Red Sox logo and putting it on a coat and selling it. So what I had asked, I said, wow, this is something. So I did a little more research and found out that License Corporation of America represented Major League Baseball and went to them for the license. What I found out was there were no adult satin jackets at all. That the attitude by License Corporation and in Major League Baseball, that these jackets or the connection was really for young kids. They said no adult will ever wear a satin jacket with a logo on it. So they said, but you know, you're here in New York after a few visits, if you're willing to put up some money as a minimum guarantee, which meant that you sold one coat or 10,000 coats, you had to pay a royalty plus a minimum guarantee. I ended up taking it. Took a shot, and which at that time was $25,000 over the course of the contract. Meaning, if I only sold one coat, I had to give them $25,000. But let me jump to the most. So we began selling coats, but we were one of 5 or 6 manufacturers. We were all considered official. What does that mean? We had the colors, we had the logos. That's what we bought. But we were all the same. And from 20 feet away, if you looked at our coat and somebody else's, even though our quality was better, even though we were 25% higher, you couldn't differentiate. There are 2 quick stories. One maybe not a little quick. I had a truck driver who would call on us and deliver material. Now, Tony rather, was a terrific guy. But you have to understand, this was a guy in a t-shirt with cigarettes up his sleeve. And let's just say that his language was not from England. Every other word began with a letter I'll let you think about it. And one day he came to me and he said, David, I know you're making these coats. He said, would you give us some coats for a church in New York? I said, sure, Tony, here, and we gave him some coats. Then, I don't know, a week later or 2 weeks later, he came back and asked for a few more, and we got them. And over a period of time, we helped him in this church. And then one day he came and he said, we asked for a check, and all right. Then he said, listen, sister wants to come see you. I says, Tony, listen to me. I have rabbis, I have ministers, I have priests calling me all the time. I don't need to see a sister. What do you need? Just tell me, I'll give it to you, which I did, and that was it. Well, maybe 3 weeks or a month later in New York was the New York Coliseum, and there was the National Sporting Goods Show there. And we had a little booth, maybe about 10 feet. And I had a table with a rack and coats on it. and we were dwarfed by all the big guys. And, you know, we're trying to sell our coats, keeping in mind that there were other licensees who also had the same thing. And all of a sudden I hear a loud noise and people, and there are three guys walking down the corridor. Oh, I should have told you that Tony kept telling me that he knew people in baseball and he could help me. And I said, okay, Tony. He says, no, I can help you. Okay. So now these three guys are walking down towards our booth, and the crowd is starting to follow them. And I hear a voice that I can't believe. It's Tony. And on the right of Tony is Billy Martin, the Yankee manager. And on the left of Tony is Joe Torre, the manager of the New York Mets. Martin goes off to the left, and Tony and Joe continue to walk into our booth. Well, you have to understand something. Here I am, a small little company, 10 by 10 booth. We've got the manager of the New York Mets, and we're in New York, and people are at this show, and all of a sudden, it was like bees to honey. They start coming over and this and asking him for autographs, and Joe comes and I'll never forget this. He reached out his hand and he says, I know who you are, Joe. You know, he says, I want to thank you for being nice to Tony. And also thanks to my sister. I said, your sister? I didn't really know anything. If you know a little bit about baseball trivia, Joe had a brother by the name of Frank who played for the St. Louis Cardinals, as well as Joe did. They both played in the majors. And he also had a sister who was a nun. And she was the nun at this church that we had given a check to and some product to. And he said to me, is there anything I can do for you? And I really didn't think of it at the time. It just came off my lips. I said, sure, will you and your staff wear coats? He said, sure, if you'd send us coats. So we sent him, so the Mets, the jackets for everybody. Now you have to remember, Joe Torre was a manager that traditionally would put his leg up on the step and sit there crossed with his arms. Now we had our logo on the sleeve. All of a sudden, we're getting major CBS, NBC exposure on television for a logo, okay? And Joe was very helpful. He got us Chuck Tanner at the Pittsburgh, and it goes on. A sidebar to that, I'm out in Kansas. This is a couple of years later, when Kansas City is playing St. Louis in the World Series. And I believe it was St. Louis had a pitcher by the name of Andujar. Now, 2 days prior to that, there was I can't remember the sporting goods chain, but I went in and I tried to tell them buy our product, it's World Series, and we're authentic, because that was the beginning of separating us from official to authentic. And the fellow, the owner of the store, said, listen, you're 25% higher than everybody else, even though your fabrics are better. But look, I got somebody else's product. I said, yeah, but we're authentic. Look at this. Doesn't say anything, and I was a little rejected. The next night, they play in the World Series. You know what the TV coverage is. Well, we're outfitting both teams. A line drive is hit at this pitcher, Andujar, and he gets hit in the leg. They call timeout, and the trainer comes out and starts to work on his leg. And all you see on television worldwide is the leg and the arm of the trainer and a satin jacket and our logo on the product. Well, the next day, the owner of that sporting goods store called me up swearing and yelling at me that no one wants to buy what was in his shop. They're not even sure of the name of your company, but they want the company, the jacket with the S and the star on it. And those are my favorite stories in terms of how we built the brand and how the brand meant. I mean, it was an incredible, incredible ride.
That's awesome. I'm going to have my kids, if they haven't watched this, I don't know if they like to watch Dad's podcast, I'm making them watch this one tonight.
Look, we did a lot of things. I remember in '85, I think it was, we had a T-shirt license, and T-shirts are T-shirts, and you know, they're designed. So I went. We had signed Larry Bird, and we went to the Celtics, and I had a relative who knew Red Auerbach. Make a long story short, we created and invented the championship T-shirt. Now, what is it? We made a design, and we gave the Celtics in the locker room a championship T-shirt. Well, they won the championship. In fact, I have someplace in my office a picture of McHale holding it up. They all wore the shirts as a symbol, and that was the event. That was the start of championship shirts that are now all over the country, if not all over the world, in terms of hats and T-shirts when they win a championship. But
Wow.
that was a part of marketing and building a brand. And I can't tell you how important building brands are. It separates you. It gives you the chance to make a little bit more margin and do things that are at a different level.
David, you've done a lot of things in your career. Obviously, the starter is right at the top, but many people don't know of your association with the sport of basketball. You've been a longtime coach, both here in Connecticut and in Florida. How did you get involved coaching basketball?
Well, first off, I guess, you know, in 1959, dating myself, we were the last Connecticut team at Hill House to win the New England Championship, which was in Boston Garden. I'd like to say to you, I was 10% has been, 90% never was. And defense wasn't really one of my specialties. I could put the ball in the basket, but a little slow of foot. In any event, I had, you know, the love of basketball. I played in high school, and I started at the Jewish Community Center, where they had a very strong program, meaning they played in New England. There was a national championship and a very proud heritage. And I started there with kids in the 7th and 8th grade, and I liked it, and it started, and from there it grew, and I stayed there almost 20 years doing it while I built the business. Took a little time off. In '79, we won a national championship, the only one ever at the center in Washington. And as I said, I loved it. And then one day I got a call after I was finished with the center, maybe a couple years later, from Hamden Hall, who had a really wonderful program. They didn't win a lot of games, but they really had terrific kids, and the school was nurturing, and asked me if I would had an interest. Well, now, you know, I'm at a high school level, and I said, sure. The pay was great, it was $1 a year, and I said, okay. I was blessed. The first year I had a terrific athlete by the name of Carl Blond, who made All-American football at UConn after he graduated with me. But he was a tough kid, inner city kid who Hamden Hall was terrific to in terms of giving him the opportunity of learning at a different level. And he was probably the first player on our team that really made a difference, and we were competitive. And then 2 years later, a couple of kids transferred in, Zach King, who ended up being a lieutenant commander of a battleship, and Avery Esdale, his father, who played at Hill House and later on at Cornell, changed the direction of the school. I mean, first of all, academically, it was difficult. If you didn't reach certain standards, you couldn't get in. And they came, and the second year they were there, we won the league and we won the New England Championship. Then from there, it began to grow. Harry Stanley, then Danny Oglesby, who holds the state scoring. He scored 3,300 points in his high school career, who had a scholarship to South Florida. So I just did it. I loved doing it. Then I gave it up. The weather got to me, and I said, okay, we'll go to Florida. I went to Florida and didn't coach for a year, and then I got a call from Pinecrest, which was same kind of school as Hampton Hall, academically strong. In fact, Pinecrest, I think 2 or 3 years ago, was named the #1 academic prep school, day school in the country. And we were competitive the first year, and then I'll never forget this. I got a call about a young kid, Brandon Knight. And, you know, I like to think, and I know my friends kid me on this, I've never recruited a kid in my life. I've encouraged kids to come. And I think there is, no disrespect to anybody, I think there's a huge difference between encouraging and recruiting. Sometimes recruiting, there's a sales aspect that I think, and Coach knows better than me, that maybe goes a little too far. I encourage this young boy who at that time was in the 7th grade. And he and his father came to see me at the school, and we had great facilities. And he was a smart kid. And I remember saying to him, how are your grades? And he said, well, I get all A's. And I said, are you challenged? He says, well, I get all A's. I said, that's not what I asked you. I asked you if you're all challenged. And he says, well, it's kind of easy. I said, well, and the thing that made the difference is, I said, well, if you come here at Pinecrest, I guarantee you will not be the smartest kid in the class. Brandon came. He started as an 8th grader. I'll never forget this. The coach, who presently the coach now of Fairleigh Dickinson, Greg Horrenda, came down, and at that time he was an assistant at Yale, and he came down and did a clinic for me. And I said, you got to see this 8th grader. He called Calhoun, who was the coach at UConn at that time, about him. The rest is history. We won, while Brandon was there, we won 4. We made 6 consecutive trips to the Final Four in the state. We won 3 state championships. We would have won a 4th. He got hurt and didn't play. I took him up to Yale. Every year, my wife and I would take 5 or 6 kids to Yale, New Haven, Trinity, UConn, just to see different schools. He liked Yale, and he could have gotten in. That's how smart he was. But Calipari in Kentucky, and he went to Kentucky for 1 year, then was drafted, I think 7th, and with the Detroit, played for Detroit 2 years, then Milwaukee, and got hurt, traded to Phoenix, and now he's back at Detroit. He signed a $70 million contract. Terrific kid, and understands values. You know, you said earlier on your program about money and values. Values are very important. If I was a team owner, let me tell you something. As much as, and I know it's easier to say, but I'm going to look at the character and everybody else in terms of how a kid, whether it be at a pro level, or college level, or high school level, how he is or she part of a team. And that's, I can't tell you how important that is. So the coaching has been great. I haven't, I stopped 2 years ago. Again, occasionally I get calls to go speak to a team, or during the summertime, go to a clinic, or 5-star, something which I do. It's hard to believe after 570 wins that I still think about it, but I do. It's fun. You know, I don't have a lot of employees to yell at. I can't yell at my wife. I can't yell at my kids. So I got to have some relief of some sort. That's basically where we're at as far as basketball is concerned.
There's no better profession. There really is.
Right? Here.
David, what important life lessons do you try to teach all your basketball players, whether they're stars like Brandon Knight or the last kid on the bench?
I'll tell you something, and I remember, and I will not use the college coach's name. I did something at the beginning of a year and try to carry it through the season. I've said the toughest thing in life, the toughest thing in business is a very simple statement. do what you say you're going to do. No more. So at the beginning of the season, before the first game, I would give a 3x5 card to every player. And I said to them, tell me what you're going to do in this game. What do you mean? Well, tell me, are you going to, how many rebounds you're going to get? Are you going to hold the guy scoreless? How many rebounds? And in the beginning, it was a little hard, but they would put down numbers. And then at the end of the game, or at the first practice, we had charts and we had stats. And all of a sudden, I would show them, well, you told me you were going to get 10 rebounds. You got 3. You told me you were going to steal the ball 4 times. You didn't get any. And it began as a simple, and maybe in some cases a silly task. But I remember a college coach coming and seeing what I did and what our kids responded to. So I would tell you that it's easy to say, I'm going to do something. I'll show up on time. I'll get the rebound. I'll get the job. I'll fill out the application. All the things that we go through. But it is difficult to do what you say you're going to do. So don't say you're going to do something if you're not going to do it. I'm a little bit, if maybe not a little bit, I'm old school. I shake your hand. If we got a deal, we have a deal. If I tell you I'll be there, I'll be there. Case in point is one of the things when the former president, not the president, came to me and talked to me about building and whatnot when I began a new career. I said, I'll do it. I didn't have a contract, didn't have anything, which I'm sure we may get into. But that if there's one thing, that's the thing. Do what you say you're going to do.
Wow. Again, I hope there's students watching this right now.
I used to get invited to go to some of the sports management classes. Forgive me. He played at Notre Dame, and he was at UNH for a long time.
Dr. Alan Sachs.
Alan Sachs. He'd always ask me to come to talk to one of his classes and pull out one of the videos that we have or commercials that we have. Which was fun too. And if I'm here, I always do it.
So, David, my fear is that we could fill an hour with starter, an hour with coaching, and there's a third aspect of your life we don't want to run out of time on here, and that is your role with UNH these days, and something I'm a big fan of. I now, when I come into work, you and I've talked about, I live over on West Shore. We've talked about that a lot on this show. And I believe you started your early life over in West Shore here in West Haven, and you've lived all over the area. But I now come to work, and I just love coming down Campbell Ave in the morning. And I got a hot cup of coffee. And one of the reasons I do that is I come to the corner here of Campbell, and I call it Parkview. I don't even call it by the street. It's Boston Post and Campbell. I love the corner of Atwood and Parkview apartment complexes. Your complexes, I know you have plans for more. I just think that looks so big time. The first place I bring a recruit when they come here is right there. I've been a lot of different schools. I've lost track, 8 or 10. But those apartment/residence halls are as nice as any I've ever seen anywhere.
Well, what happened is after my tenure at Starter and retired and found out you can't retire or do nothing, while I was at Starter, 2 of my friends, one was a lawyer and one was an architect, had a building, and they asked me if I would get involved so the 3 of us would be partners. But I said, I don't like 3 partners. I don't, because it's always 2 against 1 of some sort. No, it'll never be. Well, and we're friends, so there was never a problem. So I committed to being part of it from a financial point of view. Many years later, when I was out, the 2 guys ran into some difficulty and wanted to get out of the arrangement, 2 against 1. And I said, fine, I have nothing to do, and I bought them out. And that was the development of the development company of Acorn. At that time, Larry DeNardis was the president of the school, still highly enrolled in commuters, but boarding students were becoming clearly a direction. And they had asked me, about, at that time, I had 120 acres of land that I was hoping to get to the university, but at the time the priority was to build a dormitory. So I built a dormitory, which was at that time called New Hall. Today, I guess it's called Burgamy Hall. And we had an arrangement. The arrangement was very simple, very straightforward. I agreed to make nothing for 8 years as a sort of a gift to the university. And I mean nothing other than what the interest cost was to end the school. And at the end of 8 years, they'd either buy it or they would lease it again. And they bought the building, and that was the beginning. So now, one of the things that always disturbed me was that UNH didn't have a college town. And I wanted to create an area where it's a college town. So we said, okay, I'm gonna buy, we're gonna have 4 phases. We bought the Carroll Cutrate building, and we were gonna convert it into apartments. It was great. It was old wooden floors and beamed ceilings and everything. It was just terrific. And I had nothing at that time with the school, but I knew they needed it. And unfortunately, the contractor hit a beam and 4 floors collapsed. And fortunately, no one was hurt. And the city ended up condemning the building because it was in bad shape. We knocked it down and built from scratch, a la the Atwood. The university felt at that time, George and Steve were very helpful, and they leased the building. And we said, okay, let's keep, we said there are 4 phases. That was phase 1. Phase 2 was the park view. And we've branded the place as University Commons. In fact, the sign just went up, I think. And we built we built the park view. And then we've, at the same time, put money into the green. So we're places where they could sit. There are up to 75 seats kids could sit. We're gonna plan to have some events on the dead end street of Atwood. We're having a 3-on-3 tournament. In fact, I talked to Teddy, the basketball coach, wanted to make sure that if there's anybody involved, we're not in any way, breaking any rules. If, if I know that I don't, and Ted was terrific about that. So we're going to try to have that. COVID really threw a wrench in that, and hopefully we'll end up doing it next spring. We have an arts and crafts show. We have a book reading. So we're trying to do some things in the center between the 2 buildings. We've just acquired the library, which is going to be renovated for professional use. And then the big project will be a 5 or 6 story building that'll be on the Forest Theater site across the street. Hopefully between those 4 things, it'll start to create activity. We have, as you well know, in the Atwood, a burger place, a Mooyah, a sporting goods store, a bank. We are in the process of talking to some really key and unique players for the Parkview. And I'm hoping within the next 60 days, I could come back to you with some very unusual tenants that I think will only add to the attraction to the students that you encourage to come to UNH and the general population. So we're really excited. I mean, this was a very significant investment. I mean, this is not something that's $1 million. This is very significant, but I felt the university is worth it. I felt that the area was worth it, and it was something that I always wanted to do, and we're doing it.
Wow. I just think it's beautiful, and it's big time, and it just shows well for the institution. I can't wait to hear what your announcement is in 30 to 60 days. We'll bring you back for.
I can't wait either. I'm just hoping that it becomes a reality. I don't want to say anything until I have a signed lease in my hand, but we're going after people that, number one, we want to protect them, meaning that we don't want competitive situations.
Yeah.
And that would tie back into the student power at the university. And that would be willing to support programs at football games on Saturdays, whether it be bringing a truck or setting up a tent. We need them to be involved in building the brand and building a support nature for the university. That to us is critical. I mean, it's just, as I say, critical. That's something that we haven't been told by anybody. It's just something that we want to do. And that's part of brand building.
That's phenomenal. That's awesome.
Of course, people watching our podcast, if they've been on campus at all in the last, 10 or 15 years, they've walked by the Beckerman Recreation Center. That's you and your family. Why is it so important, David, to give back to the University of New Haven?
I guess the only way it comes back to my mother and father. I guess everybody says that. My mother, may she rest in peace, we came from very humble beginnings, very humble beginnings. My mother would have these little boxes on her shelf, and it would be 10 cents for the insurance man, and it would be 50 cents for food, and it would be 5 cents for charity, and it would be a variety of different things. We were raised that no matter what your economics are, there's always somebody that needs something beyond what you have. And that charity is something that is ingrained. It's not an obligation well, it is an obligation. And it's something that, as I said, I was just taught it at an early age, that you're supposed to give back. The university helped me at the time when I needed to work. Most of my friends went away to school. We couldn't do that. I look back at it now and even tell my kids, and they laugh. What do you mean you didn't have a phone or you didn't have a television? Yeah, we didn't. When we got a phone, it was called a party line. That's what it was, honestly. Where you had 3 or 4 people on the same line. So that's what it was, And so I respect that a great deal. I respect what the university has done. George and Dr. Kaplan in terms of where they're heading. And we hope Acorn is going to be part of that. And we will continue to do what we think will help our business and help the university at the same time. Because I believe that we're on a parallel course. I really do. Unfortunately, you're a little bit landlocked, and you don't have a lot. I remember we bought, 3 or 4 houses that sort of parallel the football stadium. Well, it's awful expensive to start buying up little houses. So hopefully that's going to change. And as we start developing our 4 phases, and we've got 2 left, I think it'll be a very good addition to what the university's mission statement is. And I'm very proud of what they've done.
David Beckerman, he's done so much for the university as a graduate, as a leader and a philanthropist, starter, the Beckerman Recreation Center, Acorn, and the new apartments he's building, and there's more to come, definitely. David Beckerman, thank you very much for everything that you've done for the University of New Haven and all that you will continue to do. And certainly thanks for joining us here on the Dr. Z and J.W podcast. We look forward to seeing you soon.
My pleasure, and good luck to everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's David Beckerman. And before we bring in our producer, Broccoli Rob Thompson, to get his thoughts, I just want to again remind all of our alums, David included, but David probably already knows this, our virtual Centennial Ball coming up as we celebrate our 100th anniversary, coming up on Saturday, October the 3rd. We want to encourage all of our alumni to register. It costs very reasonable this year, just $25 per person. Promises to be a memorable evening of student showcases, entertainment, and a live auction. Plus, we'll also have a special athletics kickoff event on Friday, October 2nd. Be sure to register for that, too. You might recognize a couple familiar faces hosting that Charge On broadcast as well. Your support through the Centennial Ball will help us get closer to meeting and hopefully even succeeding our ambitious $120 million Charger Challenge goal, which is part of the overall campaign for the University of New Haven. For more information or how to register, just go to the website, newhaven.edu/alumni. Let's bring in our producer, Broccoli Rob Thompson, himself, just like David, a UNH grad, also a member of our Athletics Hall of Fame. David's in our Hall of Fame, even though he didn't play any sports here at UNH, but he's a member because of what he's done for our athletics and our student athletes. Rob, when you take a look at the new apartments, the Atwood and the Parkview apartments, and what they're like, how does that compare to what you lived in when you were a student at UNH?
Well, I don't even want to start that conversation. Yeah, buzzy scoreboard. There were some legendary, campus bars that were right along that area right there. But it's just amazing the vision that he had. I mean, before there was Under Armour, there was Starter. And what he's done and had an impact, not just on the local community where he employed hundreds, if not thousands, of our friends and family, parents, and my friends that came out of these schools and grew up in this area. But what he's doing now that basically transformed this whole area, and it starts with the heartbeat of the town. And for a lot of us that grew up here, besides the beach area, it was Allentown. It was that area. It was that funky four-way intersection. And what he's been able to do there and what he continues to do with his vision, it's not only going to just completely transform that area and the community, but our university. So, I could listen to that. I could listen to kept going for another 2 hours.
Yeah, he very well could have. We just basically scratched the surface. I didn't even get a chance to mention it. He's a member of the Board of Trustees of the National Basketball Hall of Fame up in Springfield, Massachusetts. So he's got some great stories about the Hall of Famers who are in there, but we'll have to save that for another time. Broccoli Rob, as always, thanks for joining us here. We appreciate it. Thanks for all you do for our show and for the University of New Haven. Before we wrap up, Dr. Z, your final thoughts on what David Beckerman said.
Well, it was a treat for me to be able to bring Mr. Beckerman here for the viewers, because I've gotten to have these conversations with him in my first year here, and just thought people would really enjoy it. And as you could tell, we just scratched the surface. We hit three main areas. We didn't even get to the college, Hall of Fame, but I can't help but think our viewers enjoyed that. The stories are endless, and he hit some real high points. So again, just a lot of gratitude for what he's done for this place. And I keep gushing about that corner of Parkview and Atwood. And I drive down through it every day, and, it sells this institution so well.
It really does. As David said, it gives you that small college town feeling. And Dr. Z, you've worked in a lot of these small college towns, and I think we have a lot going for us. We've talked about our location, being a mile from the shore, and being so close to New Haven and being close to New York City and Boston. But I guess if there was one thing missing, that was probably it. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think if you get to the center of our campus, it's now this incredible residential campus, and we've had guests come from other universities and visit and go, I had no idea, this thing's beautiful. But that little corner that's evolving down there with as he said, the sporting goods store and the burger place, and I've heard some of his vision where he'd like to have added in, and I think that's going to start to become an area that our students stay at and don't leave campus to go other places. And I think you'll see other people coming here for that eventually.
Future looks bright for the University of New Haven, not only for our students, but our student athletes, our athletic department, thanks in part to people like David Beckerman. We appreciate David joining us here on the Dr. Z and J.W. podcast. Again, for all of our alums, please register for the Centennial Ball at newhaven.edu/alumni. For our executive producer, John Mays, for producer Broccoli Rob Thompson, for Dr. Z, I'm J.W. Thanks for watching the Dr. Z and J.W. podcast. We'll see you next time.